Hi, it's Nazli at the Montessori SLP. Today, I'm so excited to be joining in the big EI event. Over on my page, I'm mostly talking to parents, so it's a nice change to be talking to SLPs today. A little bit about me, I am a pediatric SLP. I've worked in the public school and private practice settings. I'm currently staying at home with my 1-year-old, and I've treated a wide variety of disorders. But today I'm going to be talking about feeding. So before I jump into my 5 tips today about encouraging family meal times, I first want to talk about the how behind the tips. So I think we've all been there where we're sitting in an evaluation, reviewing the results with a parent, and we see that look of overwhelm on their faces, just overcome with all the information. They're trying to process everything. What else are we adding to their plate? Before becoming a parent, I thought I understood what that feels like. But now that I'm a parent, I think I really understand. And so I think it's important to remember the information we're giving parents is important, but I'd say just as important or even more important than that is how we give that information. We have a big responsibility to these kids, but the parents implementing things at home, I think we all know this, is really how we see success and change. The little time they spend with us is a speck compared to their time at home or their time in whatever daycare setting, wherever they're spending their days. So with that being said, my best advice is to implement one thing at a time. Give parents one thing to focus on, let's say for a 2-week period, and allow them to feel success with that one thing. I can say from personal experience, as a parent, I'm managing and juggling so many things just from moment to moment, let alone day to day, week to week, that if someone were to make it an approachable, attainable little bite-sized piece of information for me to try to implement, that is probably going to be easier for me to do than if I get this long list of to-dos. Or even today, the 5 tips I'm going to give you today, if I got a list of those 5 tips, I think that would be really overwhelming to add to my current situation. Whereas if I say, hey, for the next 2 weeks, all I want you to do is blank. That's it. That's a little bit more approachable. So let's jump into the 5 tips. First tip, turn off the electronics for family meal times. I think this sounds like a really simple tip, but in 2020, electronics are a part of every aspect of our lives. And I think because it's so ingrained in how we have to function in the current time and from work and school and what have you, it's really hard to put them away and find time to get away from it. So that would be the first tip, is find a place to put all the electronics during meal times and bring the focus back to connection between family members. The more that we can take the distractions away from family meal times, and the more we bring the focus to connecting and really making family meal times a safe space, the more successful our selective eaters can be with, I think, bringing back the focus to just that safe environment. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, for parents to model healthy eating habits. So along the same lines of families maybe not having time to eat together, and parents maybe having their own preferences and their own food selectivity, it's important that we remind parents that they are the model for their children. And implementing fruits and vegetables in the family meal is really important. And then children seeing their parents eat those foods is really important. Why? Because parents usually are the people that these children trust the most in the world. When they see the people that they trust the most interacting with these foods in a positive and safe and healthy way, that makes them feel safer. That decreases their anxiety of even just having those foods in their own personal space. So it's a very important tip and something that we need to help encourage parents to do. Tip number 3. I'm going to move my notes over here. Asking children to help with menu planning. So this is something that I'm sure many of you, if you work with feeding, you're already doing with parents. I would say one of the biggest things I've learned is this can feel like a really overwhelming task for a parent. They're already probably struggling with meal planning and whatnot, especially right now when we're home so much. So I would break this down into bite-sized pieces. I would say maybe first encourage the parents to sit down with their child and say, I want your help with making choices for breakfast this week. What are some foods that you'd like for breakfast? And then I'm gonna add some foods that we're also going to explore during breakfast time. And that's it. Step by step, that's how we wanna take it. We don't wanna just say, hey, go and sit down with your child and plan breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks for the whole week together. That's really overwhelming. We wanna start with, hey, sit down with your kid and let's just talk breakfast. Have your child start listing off the foods, making the grocery list. If you're shopping online and getting food delivery, let them sit down and help you put things in the cart. All of these things give the child an active role in planning the meals for the week. And what we know is when they know what to expect, that helps decrease their anxiety about the meal times. So that would be tip number 3. Take it step by step, but include the children in the meal planning to some capacity. After that tip number 4, we want to get the children involved in food preparation. So they've gotten to where they're helping to meal plan. Now we want to get them in the kitchen. Now we want them to be able to measure and chop and pour and stir and all the things that are going on in preparing the meal. So we know that exposure to certain foods, even just having them in the space, is really important for our selective eaters. So let's say I'm working with my son in the kitchen and he's very selective about broccoli. Maybe he's not the one that I'm giving the broccoli to right away. Maybe I'm chopping the broccoli while he is stirring the pot of soup. We want to scaffold these steps for our parents the same way that we do for our patients. I know for me personally, I am a therapist. I've worked with children in the kitchen a lot. Getting in the kitchen with my toddler is still overwhelming. So I can only imagine for someone that hasn't had as much experience what that feels like. We want to start with little steps and we want to guide them step by step. So I'm going to tell the parent, hey, this week, this is the recipe I want you to try with your child, and these are the tasks that your child can do. So getting, again, our selective and hesitant eaters, getting them involved actively in the food preparation process, that is a really important step, and helping to encourage family togetherness during the mealtime as well. All right, tip number 5. So having a routine for family mealtimes. So every family is different about how they approach family meals. But I'd say one of the things that we can do to help decrease anxiety for our selective eaters is having a clear start and a clear end to the mealtime. So for example, maybe every meal starts with a prayer, and at the end of every meal, everyone goes around and talks about something that brought them joy that day. If this is what is happening at every single mealtime, it makes mealtime an expected routine, which decreases anxiety. It makes mealtime somewhere that's a safe space to relax. And we know for are selective eaters, they're carrying around a lot of anxiety a lot of the time. So creating that warm, relaxing, safe space for them for meal times, that's really our goal, so that they can feel like, hey, this is a great place to be. I feel good at family dinner. And that, of course, opens the doorway to them maybe trying foods that they wouldn't before, because they feel more grounded and they feel more safe in the space. Those are my 5 tips. So I would say, again, these tips may sound simple, and maybe to a therapist that we're only seeing the child certain number of times a day, or sorry, certain number of times a week, and certain minutes of the day. But for a parent who's already overwhelmed with just getting their child to eat, this is really asking a lot of them. So we want to keep that in mind. We want to give them bite-sized pieces. We want to scaffold the same way that we do with our patients. We want to scaffold these things for our patients' parents as well, and take a little bit of that overwhelm off of them. So I kind of put these tips in order of what I would think makes sense, but really everything is determined by your interactions with a family. Nobody is going to really be able to help them the way that you are. So get to know what's going on inside their household, get to know what's going to work for them, and tailor it to that particular family. I'd say maybe give them first the no electronics. That's a big one, but that's kind of, I'd say, the easier of some of the steps. So maybe work on, hey, for the next 2 weeks, all I want you to focus on is getting the electronics away from dinner time. That means brothers and sisters, mom and dad, phones away, laptops away, TV off, all of that. Once they've been successful with that for at least a couple weeks, then maybe bring in, hey, maybe now that electronics are no longer part of family meals, now let's try to implement maybe sitting down together and planning one meal of the week together. So I hope that this has been helpful information for you. I just want to end by saying thank you for doing what you do. It's always a difficult job being a speech language pathologist or speech therapist, but I feel like current times, it's very, very difficult. So I hope that you feel appreciated. I'm saying I appreciate you for whatever you're doing, and trust and know that you're making a difference. Whatever setting you're in, whatever population you're working with, I'm assuming it's early intervention if you're watching this, you're making a difference, and what you do really matters. So thank you for watching, and thank you for having me. I hope you all have a great day. Bye.